Hi, I'm Kevin Moore. I'm the Associate Director of Renaissance Vocal at Bethel University here in McKenzie, Tennessee, and this is my masterclass on musical improvisation. Musical improvisation, I think of it kind of like drawing or painting a picture. Exactly what you paint or draw is up to you, what colors you use, brushes, pencils, all that. You have all these choices to draw or create the picture you're envisioning. And I think of the same thing in musical improvisation. You're pulling from what I call your musical library, which your musical library is every song you've ever heard, learned, listened to, jingles, scales you played, chords you played, anything that you've exposed muscle memory to. And you have these licks or rudiments or songs or solos you can pull from when you're improvising. So obviously, the more that you put in your musical library, the more choices you have to improvise. So the more songs you learn, the more solos you learn, the more scales, rudiments that you practice, all these different things, you're going to be able to have more choices to pull from when you're wanting to improvise. So to increase your muscle memory for different combinations, on top of learning different solos and songs, I find it very valuable to practice rudiments. And also, I would set some time aside to practice just improvising. Not your normal practicing, but time that you spend just practicing on how to improvise. And even if you're more of a beginner, you can still take as much as you already know musically and stretch within that. Say you at least can play a major scale and a simple song or two, Amazing Grace or something. You could turn around and play the core melody and then experiment kind of going outside of that, using the other notes in the scale that you have to choose from, and also phrasing things, dynamics, all these different things that you can use to kind of make it your own when you're creating. Musical improvisation, you've heard it different ways, make it up, ad-lib it, winging it, all those different things. To get to a point where you can do that on the fly, you need to spend time practicing just improvising. I found a good way to do that in using rudiments, and I want to kind of give a few examples for you to kind of use that you can practice your own. Each instrument's obviously laid out differently, so some of these rudiments may fall and feel better on the violin or a guitar or a piano than it may work with others. With musical improvisation, I think of three main things: emotion and feel with what you're playing. If you do not play it with passion and feel, it will come out sounding that way. Also context of what you're playing inside of. If you're playing on a session on a song, you have to listen to the direction the song's going, the vibe that's going on, what are the other instruments doing. So context, I would say, is number two. Three, pocket, feel, and the best way to do that is to practice with a metronome. These three things are the main ingredients I think of in musical improvisation, other than constantly adding to your musical library different things that you've learned with muscle memory patterns that you can therefore pull from and use when you're improvising on the fly. Here's an example of a few different rudiments that you could practice or come up with your own in the key of G. You obviously can extend past the octaves. You want to learn these in different keys. Here's a couple of other rudiments. Or so on top of these rudiments, you can also practice just basically kind of playing off of a one chord and improvising off of that without any accompaniment. Or you can use a metronome and turn it on and play in time. An example would be if we're going to play in the key of G. Basically, I'm going to just improvise within that. I'm going to try to go from a small improvisation to a little bit deeper as it goes through. You can see at times I use some of the rudiments that I kind of just explained in the middle of some of that improvising that I did. So basically it becomes part of your tools, part of your library of stuff to pull from. The rudiments can bridge gaps between licks that you have. It can also, you can actually just play them verbatim, or you can also just kind of use them to bridge the gaps for fills and things of that sort. I brought my good friend and the executive director of the Renaissance program, Matthew Holt, to help me out with a few examples in this musical improvisation. One of the things before we get going, Matthew, if you could play just the diamond G chord, and what I'm going to do is kind of start improv in kind of a low, basic level and try to stretch it a little bit to try to bridge the gap between kind of more the beginner level and the more advanced level to kind of give a bit of a range in that. So if you would, diamond a G chord, and I'll start kind of improvising over it. So this kind of give you, basically you could practice, spend some time practicing just holding a chord and taking what you do have in your musical library and kind of practice applying it. When you practice, actually set some time aside to practice specifically for improvisation. So you don't wait to the gig or the session to try stuff. You want it to kind of be almost at the tip of your tongue in your playing, so you'll be able to readily use it. For this example, Matthew's going to just start playing. It's nothing we've come up with. You're just going to improv, just come up with whatever you want. He's going to go through different keys, and he's going to start in C. And so what we're going to do is basically I'm going to play off of him as I recognize the chord changes, as I recognize where he's going. That's the other thing in improvising. Don't just say something when you can, but when you have something that makes sense, it's in context, you know where it's going. So we're going to give this example of improvisation. A big part of improvising is basically being able to play not only the context of the song, but off of other musicians, the parts that they're playing. So this next little section, Matthew and I were going to play back and forth. I'm going to try to play, not necessarily copy what he's playing and vice versa, but being influenced by the direction he's taken it and basically play in that same vision, but within your context of your library as Matthew's using his library. 1, 2, 3, 4. So for this next section, I have an E rudiment that I've come up with. For fiddle or violin, it's not the best key necessarily to play in. I've come up with this rudiment. I'm going to do it slow and repeat it a few times. And as I repeat through it, basically I'm going to start improv and stretching out of it, showing you how to basically not just play the rudiment itself, but how to kind of stretch from it. And once again, this is kind of more the intermediate section, so the more you cover the basic foundation and the more stuff you add to your library, the easier the intermediate section will be, bridging the gaps to stretching rudiments. So here's the rudiment, slow. I'll cycle through maybe twice, and then I'll start improvising off of it in E. Okay, here's the same E rudiment, at least as the core, and I'm going to improv off of it. And we'll kind of do a little bit more medium speed, get a little faster with it, and maybe stretch the improvising a little bit more. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thanks for watching this Masterclass Monday. See you next time.